We've reached the end of the year, so upcoming New Year's resolutions. Inside of all of this, I have my New Year's resolution with all of you guys for next year, and so we'll get to that probably in about 10 minutes or so. But I want to first start up by saying what I've got up here. I have a couple things on here that are deeply personal for me in terms of my own experience with spiritual development and learning wisdom traditions and all of that. Starting with something that happened to me several months ago when I was studying samadhi, the concept of the eightfold path of the Buddha, in which it's really a deep clarity and a peaceful heart. And what I encountered in studying it was this idea that there is no path, okay? There is really no thing you're supposed to be doing. There's no religion you need to follow, you know? There's no ritual that you can follow, okay? No amount of yoga will get you there, okay? No amount of meditation. And that if it were any of those things, then we'd line up as disciples behind it. Throughout the world, there's a bazillion different types of things you can try. But when it comes right down to it, the ultimate in spiritual development is the simplest thing ever. It's what I had up there as my sort of New Year's resolution for this year, what I talked about several months ago. Recognition and liberation are simultaneous. That's said in the Tibetan Book of the Dead about 10 times. And it's the simplest of all concepts. The path to awakening is recognition. It's just like figuring it out. Well, how do you do that? It's almost exactly the same as observing a sunset and like recognizing that it's beautiful. Well, it's maybe not beautiful for everybody. If you have a sunburn, it might not be beautiful for you in that moment, okay? But how do you recognize the beauty of a sunset? Well, it's a personal experience. It's falling in love. That's a personal experience. What does it feel like to be in love? And it doesn't just mean human love either. What about loving your pet or loving a sports team or whatever? That's uniquely personal. How does one get one to do that? There really isn't a way. There's a lot of stuff you can practice, physical world stuff. You could practice your golf game, your free throw shooting and all that kind of stuff. You could practice learning how to knit or to cook good cookies, right? You could practice a lot of different things, but it doesn't mean it's spiritually awakening. So why would that work with religion? Why would going to church on Sundays from 11 to noon, why crossing yourself or like bowing to Mecca, no offense, all of those things are perfectly fine to try, but it doesn't give you direct access to the divine creator. You don't get direct access to God or Allah or whatever. You don't get that unless you have recognition, okay? And so that takes a lot of the pressure off. There's nothing you need to be doing, save for the idea of seeking. We have to be looking for it, okay? And when we seek, we find. It's that simple. And it doesn't matter which philosophy you come from, right? It doesn't matter which philosophy you sample from. They all work in their own way. But what ends up happening in the end is you have to have this experience of recognition. So let me walk you through all of this stuff. We're going to start with what I've called, and we've talked about, is the male part of all of us. Remember, we're all made male and female in God's image. And it's not about gender. It's about energy dynamics and the way the head and the heart work together, okay? There's a male aspect. And in this context, I want you to think of it as the brain and the mind, because it does direct what you're focusing on. It directs what you're going to be experiencing. And the heart follows along. I've said for thousands of years, women have been persecuted and abused because of the misunderstanding of what it means for the female to obey the male or the wife to obey the husband. The truth is the heart does obey the mind, right? Because if the brain says something like, worry about this, fear that, resent that, regret that, your heart follows quickly, doesn't it? You can make your heart beat faster just by worrying. Think about something that stresses you out. And the heart's going to change pretty quickly, isn't it? Okay? Well, if you settle it down by redirecting thoughts, redirecting energy, if you will, to the heart, well, the heart's going to change. Like, I'm going to work on being patient here or forgiving or whatever the case may be. Happy wife, happy life, okay? Well, guess what? The heart, while it listens to the head, and it obeys the head for sure, it gives feedback. Because if the head is giving bad information to the heart's saying, I don't like that. And it sends negative information in the form of your emotions back to you. Rumi says that you are truth from head to toe. What else do you need to know? Well, guess what? Your body is a perfect feedback loop for the way you're looking at the world. If you're perceiving the world in a way that's off the Tao, off the Holy Spirit, if you're not in alignment, you're going to feel stress, you're going to feel anxiety, you're going to feel depression, you're going to feel mental health issues, you're going to end up having addictions. But once you're in alignment, guess what? The heart sends out good feelings, good energy states. And now you realize, hey, I'm thinking right. See, the wife corrects the husband. okay? And they work together inside the head like this. First, tabula rasa, we're born blank. All of our brains, when we're born, have virtually nothing on it except for basic reflexes, okay? You're not born speaking English or French or German or anything like that. You're not born Muslim or Christian or Jewish or atheist. You're not born any of that stuff. You're born blank, just like me. But given enough time, Hebb's law is the neuroscientific concept or fact of neurons that fire together, wire together. And we've long since found, thanks to those scientists at CMU, that there's certain things that are already coded in your head, like Jennifer Aniston, igloos, and dogma, that's inside your head in the same spots in mine. Just like your left pinky, for the most part, is going to be in the same spot as my left pinky. Well, we already know that, again, Google it, Jennifer Aniston is a neuron associated inside everybody's head. If you know who Jennifer Aniston is, and I just mentioned her, that neuron just lit up. We also know that a concept like an igloo is in the same spot in our heads. And so now that you're thinking of an igloo, the same spot in your head is lighting up as it is in mine, just like you could wiggle your pinky finger, your left pinky finger, just like I am. Well, dogma's in our head like that too. Pick a religious tradition. All of the teachings of Christianity is in all of our heads. All the teachings of Islam is in all of our heads. It's there for you. You could go read the Quran, and then it'll click because you worked on it. You could do it with Christianity. But you better have the willingness to do that, because a lot of people settle into their dogma and say, my way's the right way. No, my way's the right way. Let's argue and fight to the death over it. Meanwhile, their prophets aren't actually teaching that. Irony. They're trying to teach something else. And that's the key to all of this. We get taught dogma. I've drawn this several times, the way Kabbalah teaches it, that we all have this heart, and this heart is loaded with desires. I call it snakes of desire here, because they teach the 613 different desires in the heart. And each one of these little desires is like a snake, because it's sort of protecting and it's guarding this thing that's in the center of it. It keeps you from getting access to this, whatever this is, we'll mention that in a second, by all these various desires. And if you work on these desires, you develop these desires will grow into something bigger. Pick anything in the physical world that you want to work on. Pick anything. And you can, that didn't work so well. You pick a desire you want to cultivate, and that desire will grow inside your heart, right? So can you work on making more money? Sure. Can you work on using drugs? Sure. Can you work on your basketball game? Sure. Can you work on becoming the best Christian in the world? Yeah, you can do that. All these are various desires that grow in your heart. None of them are truth, though. None of them get you to the answer. None of them get you to the divinity. They don't get you access to the very thing that you're looking for. Because there's only one desire that does that. In Kabbalah, they call it the point. It's a point in all of our hearts. It's like an embryo. It's a little egg inside of all of us, and it needs to be fertilized. The mind will fertilize it. We talked about this with the Christmas story last week. That the Christ is fertilized by the ability of the mind and the heart to work together in sync, and then we give birth to the Christ inside ourselves. It's exactly the way the Krishna story is told in Hinduism. Okay? So you better get your mind and your heart in alignment. The intention of those two things work together, and then what happens when you do that? This point gets cultivated, and it starts to grow, and it gets bigger. And like a black hole, guess what? It can start to consume all these other desires. And it's the one and only desire that works, too. We all have this in common. We are all created to do this. Feel free to go for all these other desires. It'll leave you disappointed. In Buddhism, Buddha teaches dukkha, the law, if you will, that the world is physically unsatisfying. The world is a temporary place. You're not going to get peace through the world. It's unsatisfying and it's temporary, and it causes suffering. That's all these other desires. But this one desire, the point that we all have, which can be likened unto Israel, which is called in Kabbalah, Israel is the connection between us with God. Elohim is God in Hebrew, and Israel is connection or struggles with. And once you decide to go on this journey by picking that one desire, you're going to have to beat back all the dogma, whatever it is that got taught to you via Hebb's law. I mean, no one walks around saying English is the better language than French. At least I hope they don't do that. And French is better than Russian, and I found God because I speak Swahili. That doesn't make any sense. Yet we do that with religion, and it's just dogma, and it's just teachings. And yet this one perfect, pure concept, this idea that we all have a little piece of God placed inside of us, It's perfect. It's ideal. You cannot fool Mother Nature. Either you desire that or you don't. And nature can tell. You know who can't tell? Every other human being on earth. There's why we're not supposed to judge each other. You know whether or not you're looking for it because you can feel it. First of all, your head should you can tell you're starting to think about things different. Thoughts will show up different. You'll start focusing on different things. Next thing you know, you're reading books and texts and you're practicing being patient in traffic and stuff like that. You can notice that. That's called observation, which is what we're going to do in a minute, okay? You should be able to tell through awareness whether or not you're actually working on the development of the spirit within. You also know when you're not, because if you're just watching a football game rooting for your team to win, you're probably not working on spiritual development, okay? And if it's just about gaining political power, you ain't working on it for sure. Jesus says to be a peacemaker. That means pulling it all together and embracing the all and working together somehow for this collective good, which, by the way, is everyone's liberation. The more you develop this spiritual heart, the more you can feel it. It's its own reward. You know, I work in addiction. This thing, when you develop that spirit, produces endorphins and GABA and serotonin and dopamine and all the good brain juice, okay? Because of that. Or you could try the drugs, which is like another one of these dots, because that won't work either. The only thing that works, as Jesus says, seek until you find. And when you find that, you develop it, it's your spiritual self. Once you do that, that will work. And then you repeat again and again and again and again. So here we have a beautiful teaching from Krishnamurti. Krishnamurti is an unaffiliated spiritual teacher. He was, I think, like 1890 to 1980 or something like that. Great spiritual teacher. And he disavowed being affiliated with any particular religion. And there were groups of people that were trying to do that, as I understand his teaching. But he went on to say, listen, there's a very specific way to experience this. And it's that there is no way. He says, truth is a pathless land. There isn't a specific thing that you can be doing. And he goes on to say, you will not find truth in religion, philosophy, dogma, ritual, behavior, or technique. You can't get there doing that. It was my experience studying Samadhi. The more you try to find God by going to church and trying to please a God through behaviors or rituals or whatever, and I find, how much money should I write this check for? You know, will God be happy with me or whatever? Or I murdered someone, I didn't murder someone, I used drugs, I didn't use drugs, who you have sex with, all that kind of stuff. All of it is irrelevant. And you can find this in all the teachings of Jesus quite nicely. But also spiritual teachers like Krishnamurti. Krishnamurti says, only through the mirror of relationship, and here we find my New Year's resolution for 23, at least in this group setting. I want to work hard with all of you, working on what it means to be a mirror. It's one of my favorite mental health concepts, but I haven't developed it enough together. And so Krishnamurti says, only through the mirror of relationship do you find God. Only through the mirror of relationship do you find truth. Okay? And he says, through the observation of your own mind. Okay? Not through intelligence, but through observation of your mind, through the understanding of your own mind. That is directly linked to recognition and liberation are simultaneous. How? Because you got dogmatized. I don't know if that's a word, but that sounds cool. You got dogmatized just like I did, just like everyone in the world did. Most likely, if you're born in the United States and you're religious, you're probably Christian. Most likely, if you're born in Syria and you're religious, you're Muslim. Logical, right? And that's dogma. You got taught your stuff, I got taught mine. The way to join together is to walk back that dogma. There isn't a single physical thing that's going to find your way to truth. But through the mirrors of relationship, which is how we relate to each other, through those relationships and through understanding what you got taught, whether or not you got taught right or wrong, whether you got taught racist perspectives or sexist or whatever, or to judge and hate and like somehow to cancel other people is like a wonderful thing to do, and to force apologies on people, right? You're not going to find any spiritual teacher talking about that. That's dogma. I must put my foot down and I got to show those people that they're wrong. Jesus didn't do that while he was being crucified. And so through relationship, what Jesus would have done with the people that were torturing and murdering him, he was looking at them as a mirror because he saw their ignorance and he forgave them for it. It's why it's the first thing he said on the cross. While he's being nailed to a cross, forgive them for they know not what they do. Wow, that's powerful. Instead of, those people are wrong for the way they believe, we should cancel them and make sure they get fired. Okay? Well, that would be ignorant, and it doesn't cultivate this thing. Try it. Or work on forgiving, because that detaches you from the ego, and it brings you back to this type of mind, which is the entire point of it. We have to get back what Jesus says to approach heaven as a child. Get back to this state, okay? But it doesn't mean the state of ignorance. It doesn't, because you're not going to forget your name in this process. You're just going to recognize through observation who you really are. You'll still remember where your car keys are, hopefully, how to drive. You'll still remember that, you got to pay your taxes at tax time. It's not forgetting all that stuff. It's emphasizing the truth of what you are. And that's super important for what this drawing is. This process leads us, as he says in this book, Total Freedom. Freedom is not a choice. I love this. We tend to think of freedom as making choices and decisions, okay? I'm free to do whatever I want. That's hilariously backwards. It's actually the exact opposite. If you think you're making choices, you're not realizing that we're conditioned robots. Why do we do what we do? We're trained monkeys. Now, through the power of observation, Krishnamurti says, freedom is not a choice. Freedom is choiceless awareness. That's when he, dropped the mic right there. I love that. Choiceless awareness, it literally gives me chills. Because it means I'm not special. You're not special. Those of us who are doing things that are so-called bad, okay? It's done out of ignorance. Those of us who are doing things that you might call good, it's done out of being spirit. And you're not making those decisions. Those decisions are moving through you on a superposition percentage basis, okay? And so it becomes choiceless, says Krishnamurti. It's choiceless because you don't decide it. I came across this in Kabbalah years ago. Kabbalah says the more spiritual you become, the less freedom you have. You know why that is? Because the more spiritual you become, the more you realize there's only one thing to be doing. And the only one thing you want to be doing is love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love another as oneself. And in every and all things, that's how you see it. And so you actually have less choices over time. And yet it's freedom because your mind doesn't feel restricted at all. You have recognized that you're a divinity, that you're in touch with God right here, right now, because a piece of it was placed inside of you. And you know that, and you develop it, loving God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. What happens automatically is love another as oneself. And then guess what you want? Everyone else to do this. Now it's like all this other stuff doesn't matter. You have less choices, okay? And it gets to the point, just like the tree doesn't decide to grow and sprout leaves, the tree just does it because it's programmed to do it and the Spirit gives it life. That's what we become. It's total freedom because you're the detached observer. The third noble truth, all our suffering happens because, this is the second noble truth, all of our suffering happens because we're attached, but the third noble truth is detachment. You want to feel better? Stop clinging to all these ideas in your head. What Krishnamurti is talking about. Through your observation, you can say, okay, that's dogma that got taught to me. It doesn't have to go this way. I can fully accept and embrace circumstances as they are. It is what it is. And through your observation of that, you feel the Spirit start to surge inside of you, like, let's do that again. What else can I drop? What else can I accept? Who else can I stop judging, including myself? Right? That's the third noble truth, detachment. It's the path. And it leads us right into the eightfold path, at the end of which is samadhi. And that's the spirit which Krishnamurti is talking about here as well. When you learn how to just observe your own mind, look for the dogma, and then you recognize that the stuff you're clinging to ends up showing up in your relationships, and it gets kicked back to you, what you need to learn, not what you need to correct the other person on, but the universe or God will show you, you need to work on this because you're the one that still is holding on to dogma. This is how stuff needs to be. See, when you get really good at that, we end with one of my favorite all-time teachings. I know I did a video on it a while ago, in which in the secret book of James, Jesus says, the order of the word is this. First comes faith, then love, then works. He makes it so simple. Instead of doing, which is works, notice how that comes last. The order is faith, then love, then works. And let me just draw it for you, okay? Because faith requires, as I just talked about for 15, 20 minutes, faith requires what I just said, like trusting that. Do I really have a little piece of God inside of me? am I a conditioned robot? Am I really making choices, or are choices making me? Okay? If you could change, then you could right now start speaking in a different language. You could drop all addictions immediately. If you have a mental health issue, it could go away immediately. In order to do those things, you have to change the energy. You have to add the spirit. Okay? And so faith comes first, and that takes some effort. You have to focus a little bit. You have to learn how to look at the world spiritually. You have to learn how to look at traffic as a chance for patience. You have to experience through relationship frustration and resentment towards others, and then drop it. And when you drop it, you go, oh, that does work. Hey, you should try it out too, right? Love another as oneself. And then you drop it all. Repeat, repeat, repeat. That's Seb's law. Next thing you know, all these little dots go away, right? They get consumed by the spirit within, and love is the feeling you have. So you take the leap of faith and say, what the heck, I'm just going to work on this spiritual stuff, right? And that's large part of what wisdom is. Not intelligence, like Krishnamurti says. It's not intelligence. It's wisdom. It's understanding how to apply your emotions and your focus in certain situations. Then when that comes to you, this feeling called love comes over you, and here I go with the expansion of this inside your heart, your spiritual vessel. The more you get inside of here, the more you can fill this up. What is this? I drew this a few times. Maybe better, maybe worse. I'll let you judge. That is a lawnmower, right? A lawnmower is perfectly useless with an empty tank. But a tank filled with orange juice, still useless, okay? A tank filled with, old gas will work, but it's gonna be a little choppy. What about premium, high octane fuel or whatever is supposed to go in there? Now it's gonna work, okay? Well, all of us are like that. Our bodies are destined, as Paul says, our bodies are destined to do great works, okay? We're designed to do great works. But there's only one thing we have to do. The only thing we have to do is fill the tank with the right fuel. That's it. And I just walked you through how to do it. It's hide and seek. We all got conditioned wrong. All of us. Buddha calls it conditioned ignorance. We got taught wrong, and then we find ourselves at a stage in our life, maybe multiple lifetimes, and we go, well, this ain't working. And then once you realize that, the path is the same for all of us. Now I gotta walk it back. There's a Hindu teaching, if you want to access truth, give up your opinions. Now, how many Americans in particular want to give up their opinions? Okay? We think our opinions are so important. Well, where'd you get your opinions from? I've observed my own mind a lot. I understand my family of origin and the stuff they taught me. And I hold on to the stuff that's very valuable. We should do that. But we should upgrade the stuff that didn't work so well. And if you have stuff that you got taught and it doesn't work, as Buddha says, throw it out. Upgrade. Release, let go, see what works. That's how you find out truth. That's why there isn't any specific pathway. What works for someone else might not work for you. But when you've done it correctly, which is through your observation, through your absence of judgment of others and yourself. Remember that Chinese proverb, we're all on the same journey. I just drew it best I could. We're all on the same journey. Those who blame others haven't started. That's dogma. You're wrong because. Very dogmatic. Doesn't exist. You stop blaming others, but then you keep blaming yourself. That doesn't get the job done either, but the proverb says you're halfway home. You're getting closer. Stop blaming other people. But if you keep blaming yourself, what's wrong with me, the things that I did wrong, or how could I be better, or whatever, well, you're still stuck. But those who blame no one have arrived, that says the Chinese proverb. That means you've released it all. You've recognized this whole thing is a journey of letting go that which you got taught. And this doesn't mean you're not functional, okay? Because at the phase in which you're ready for this, you're now conditioned to go be a good human, okay? You're conditioned. You'll remember your skills. You'll remember how to butter bread. You're not going to forget that. You'll remember your temporary name. But now it'll be fueled. It'll be fueled correctly. Let's fill this guy up, right? When this tank is fueled, guess what? It is programmed, or however these are designed, to go cut lawns. Whatever it is that you're doing in your physical world, and all of us have different skills this way. If it's a musician or as an artist of any kind, or a chef, or as a teacher, or as just a sibling, whatever it is that you are, in all your jobs and all the stuff and endeavors, once you're filled with the Spirit, guess what? You're going to go do that the best you can, and you're also not going to brag about it. Hence, no man shall boast. You're not special. You got designed to do this. You were predestined, as Paul says. You were predestined to do that which you're doing. And your one job, your only job, is to learn how to find that spirit inside yourself and fill yourself with it, period. And then you get the benefits emotionally for sure. And now you're not going to brag. As Jesus says, I'm doing nothing. I'm just doing what my Father tells me to do. It's very powerful. It's very effective therapeutically too. So, New Year's resolution, this being the last time I'll talk to you in 2022, I want to get really good at processing with all of us, including myself, and using examples of what mirror of relationship really means. Thank you, Krishnamurti, for pointing that out. And that's the New Year's resolution. If you want to join me, I'll check back again. I assure you that the goal will be to get filled with more spirit and to use our loved ones and our enemies, everybody that you experience, as a perfect sign of where you're at in your spiritual development. Okay? Each person is a test of one way or another. Each person is either going to show you where your weaknesses are, or they're going to affirm your strengths. And if you empower yourself by saying, hey, I just want to find this. Go back several months, we did a group on the Song of the Pearl or the Hymn of the Pearl. The story of the boy that gets sent into the kingdom and he has a mission. And the mission is to find a pearl. And when he shows up in the town or the country, he adopts the customs of all the people. And he starts to dress like them, he starts to eat like them. In the process of assimilating, he forgets his mission. And then halfway through life, he's sort of disjointed, or doesn't feel so good. And then I think an eagle flies out of the night, and it reminds him, hey, you were coming here for a mission. You're supposed to be finding the pearl. And you spent all this time assimilating, okay? Then all of a sudden he has a calling, and he goes looking for the pearl. Where does he find it? It's in the ocean, and there's a serpent guarding it. Well, that's this, the ocean, if you will, all these desires, and there's a serpent guarding it. That's called the ego. And in the Song of the Pearl, what the boy does is he lulls the serpent to sleep. He calms it somehow, right? He hypnotizes it. And then he's able to snatch the pearl. Did it end? Oh, did you? Okay, it's all good. Yeah. Oh, that's fair. Fair enough. We're at the end anyways, okay? Thanks for pointing that out. So what are we supposed to do? We're here to find the pearl too. In order to do it, you're going to have to lull the serpent to sleep. What's the serpent? Your ego. And all the stuff, it's saying, no, you're not good enough. They're not good enough. No one can do this. You need to worship these prophets and all blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, all the prophets are saying the same thing. Muhammad wanted no credit. Jesus said that you're the light. Buddha said you're the Buddha too. All of them saying the same stuff. Okay? And the ego will say, well, that's not true. I can't do that. I'm screwed up because this or that. And others will say, I'm special because none of that's true. Okay? So we have to lull that thing to sleep, and then you snatch the pearl. That pearl is placed inside of all of us. When you find out what it is and you connect to it and you grow it, then you fill up your vessel with spirit light. Then you're going to live your best possible life.